This is the 52nd lecture in the FOA lecture series on fiber optics. This lecture is on fiber optic network restoration, planning for restoration. This is part 2 of a 3-part lecture series on restoration. In lecture 51, we covered causes of damage. This lecture will cover planning for restoration. And in lecture 53, we'll cover the restoration process itself. In the first lecture, we looked at the causes of network outages, cable plant damage, equipment failures, infrastructure damage, natural disasters, and installation damage. And we talked about how to protect your cable plant, to design the cable plant properly, install it properly, have complete documentation on the cable plant, to be careful to not let unqualified personnel near your fiber, either during installation or afterwards. And we want you to plan from the beginning for restoration. And that's what this lecture is all about. One of the questions we get all the time at the FOA is, what's the standard for burying underground cable? And well, there's lots of them. As far as we know, there's no generally accepted international standard, but there's lots of groups that have written their own, groups like telcos and governments and departments of transportation and things like that. But the typical underground construction that everybody agrees to is that you dig a trench about 1 meter or 3 feet deep, and you bury the cable near the bottom of that on some bedding and have about 32 inches or 800 millimeters of backfill. About halfway up, you put a marker tape. That way, you have some way of easily locating where the cable is. It's hard to emphasize enough that the location of a marker tape that helps you find the cable is very important. And having it above the cable means that if somebody comes along with a backhoe, they may well pull the marker tape up and notice it and stop digging before they dig your cable up. If you have to install a cable at a shallower depth, for example in rocky terrain, it's not unusual to actually cover the cable with a concrete slab or bury the conduit in concrete to provide a certain additional amount of protection. It's very important to mark underground cables, to put signs up above them, to provide some warning to people who might be digging in the area that they are digging around your communication cables. Your GIS location should be exact. The locations of the cable, the locations of the manhole, the locations of utility poles, and the like. If possible, bury your cables deep enough, use your marker tape above the cable, and make sure that contractors doing work in the area know that they should call before they dig. There is a group here in the U.S. called the Common Ground Alliance that keeps track of utility construction underground and runs 2 services, Call Before You Dig and now Click Before You Dig, that contractors should use to make sure that they have information about any buried infrastructure in the area. Unfortunately, these people don't do anything for aerial cables, but we're working on that right now. When you design your cable plant, you need to consider service loops. If you need to splice for repair, you're going to need 5 to 15 meters of extra fiber. It's usually not a problem where you're doing splices because you need about that much cable to pull the splice closure out of the underground manhole or handhole to actually do the splicing in the splice truck. You want to also leave service loops on aerial cables. If you can pull enough extra cable out to splice it, you won't have to splice in an extra section of the cable, and it will save you a lot of work. Responding fast in a situation that requires restoration depends on these areas. Your planning, making sure that you've thought about restoring and are prepared. Redundancy, we'll look at that in a second. Documentation. The most important thing in a restoration process is having the documentation on your cable plant so you know where it goes and what it should be doing. You're going to need tools and test equipment and replacement components. And you're going to need somebody that knows what they're doing, that's trained so they can do the restoration work quickly. As part of your planning process, you need to make sure you have complete documentation, that you have route maps of your cable plant with GIS data, with locations of the cables, the manholes and handholds, splice points, terminations, patch panels, poles, drops to users, anything else that may give you information on the cable plant so you can track down and fix problems quickly. You need to know the location of the cable plant, including the splice points and service loops, even the aerial ones like the service loop here, that will allow you to extract some cable to use for splicing. You need to know the diagrams for splice closures, what fiber is spliced to what fiber and where. You need cable and fiber IDs. You need test data from end to end. All of this information, if it is available, will make it much quicker for techs to come in and fix problems. Test data, including end-to-end loss and OTDR traces, will allow you to determine what has changed in the cable plant and will allow you to determine where problems are. Splice and termination point locations are important because you can look at an OTDR trace and see something, but it may be far enough away that the location is uncertain. If you can locate it with regards to a splice or termination point, you can more accurately find where the problem is. Route diversity or redundancy is a normal part of planning a network. That's why, for example, people build loops around cities so the system can work in either direction. But even if you're running a network in a city point to point, like from point A to point B here, if you have multiple routes over fibers to the same point, you have a geographically diverse system. If you don't have hot links operating that you can automatically switch over to, the way telcos or internet service providers often do, you can easily have patches available where you can patch from one cable plant location to another and do a manual switchover. It's easy in metro areas. It's more difficult in rural areas, obviously, because of the distances involved. But it's very important in a metro area. It's equally important to think about the electronics in your communication systems, which is just as likely to be a problem. Do all of your locations for the electronics have backup power? Do you have system manuals for everything? How about spare modules? All of these can be very important if you have a failure in the electronics to get the system back up and running as quickly as possible. The other thing to remember is that if you have to do restoration, you're probably going to need some spare components. Probably some cable, some splice closures, maybe some of the other system hardware. And you probably had leftovers when you built the network. So don't necessarily throw all that away or recycle it or sell it. Store it away somewhere along with the documentation of the cable plant so that if you do need some cable, you have cable of the same type available and you have splice closures of the same type so that you can quickly access those and rebuild the network. Obviously, you're also going to need tools and test equipment. The restoration will require a fully equipped installer, who I might add needs to be of a very high quality and well trained and certified. You're going to need fiber optic test equipment, including an inspection microscope for your connectors, visual fault locators, optical loss test sets, and OTDRs. And then if you have to do repair work, you're going to need installation tools, including a fusion splicer. So plan for having those available, or if you have to, having a contractor who has those available ready when you need them for restoration. In our next lecture, lecture 53, the third lecture of the series on fiber optic network restoration, we're going to talk about finding and fixing the problems. We're the Fiber Optic Association, the International Professional Society of Fiber Optics, and the recognized certifying body for fiber optic techs. You can go to our website, foa.org, where you'll find a tremendous amount of technical information on fiber optics.